Hello everyone, welcome to the online classes of biology for class 12th. Today we'll take up chapter 6, molecular basis of inheritance, and the topic that we will cover today is transcription in prokaryotes and eukaryotes. That means the learning objective for this session are definition of transcription, the process of transcription in prokaryotes and the process of transcription in eukaryotes. That means after completion of the session, you will be able to get a better and deep understanding of all these topics. Now about the process of transcription. First, focus on the image given. There is the DNA strand and the DNA strand, the both strands get separated and only one of the strand is able to form the RNA with the help of the enzyme RNA polymerase following the base complementarity rule. Now what is the base complementarity rule? That means if there is thymine, then in front of it there will lie the adenine. If there is cytosine, there will lie the guanine. And if there is on the DNA strand adenine, then on the newly formed RNA there will be uracil instead of thymine. Now only one of the strand is participating in the formation of RNA, and that strand is termed as the DNA template strand, while the another strand of DNA remains inactive and termed as the coding strand. So the image is making it very clear that out of the two strands of DNA, only one will form the RNA while the another will remain inactive. The one which is participating will termed as the DNA template strand and the another one will term as the coding strand. The process of copying genetic information from one strand of the DNA into RNA is termed as transcription. Now, in transcription, as we are already aware of that only a segment of DNA and only one of the strand is copied into RNA, but there should be some reason for it. So the possible reasons are that only one of the strand is acting as a template, not both the strands are mentioned here. If both strands will act as a template, what can be the possibilities? They would code for RNA molecules with different sequences, and the sequence of amino acid and coded proteins would be different. That means if both the DNA strands are involved, then they will form two types of RNAs that will be complementary to each other, and the two RNAs they will again form different types of proteins. And that means with the necessary proteins, some unnecessary proteins will get formed and they will complicate and interrupt the biochemical reactions taking place inside the cell. So it is not appropriate for the cell that both the strands of DNA will act as a template. Now what is the second reason for only one of the strand is acting as a template? That if two RNA molecules would be complementary to each other, and if they are complementary and there is no mechanism that they remain separated, so they will get wind up together and they will form a double stranded structure. And the double stranded RNA is an inactive molecule. It will not it will not participate in the process of translation, that is protein formation. So no protein formation will take place inside a cell. So the both possibilities are there. If the two strands of DNA are acting as a template strand, then either different types of proteins that are unwanted will form and interrupt the processes, and if the two are there and complementary to each other, so they will form the double stranded RNA, which is an inactive molecule, and no protein formation will take place. So these are the reasons that only one of the DNA template act as a template strand and the another one remain inactive and act as a coding strand only. Now here they are showing the same thing, that there are two strands of DNA both get separated and one strand is taking part in the process of RNA formation. Now the strand which is the parental strand or the parent template or the DNA template, that strand has the polarity 3 prime to 5 prime, while the another strand will have the polarity, that is the coding strand, 5 prime to 3 prime. So that means the parental strand has the polarity 3 prime to 5 prime, and so the RNA will form in the direction of 5 prime towards the 3 prime. I think you must have recalled that DNA formation also takes place in the same direction, 5 prime towards the 3 prime, and similarly the RNA will also form from 5 prime towards the 3 prime. So to form a strand with 5 prime towards the 3 prime, we need a template or the parental strand which has the polarity 3 prime to 5 prime, and then it will follow the complementary rule and it will synthesize a new RNA. Now the question comes, when the second strand, that is the coding strand, is not coding anything, then why it is termed as the coding strand? Basically the coding strand codes or signifies, or it shows that where is the location of the promoter and the terminator. So the promoter will locate towards the 5 prime end of the coding strand and the terminator will locate towards the 3 prime end of the coding strand. Because the coding strand is basically coding or showing that the location of the promoter and the terminator, that's why it is termed as a coding strand. Instead it is not actively forming the RNA. Now the coding and the promoter and the terminator, all these things will get more clear into the next slide. The enzyme RNA polymerase opens the DNA strands and synthesizes an RNA complementary only one of the DNA strands. That means only one of the DNA strand, which is the template, will form the RNA following the base complementarity rule proposed by Chargaff. Now about the transcription unit. The complete strand of DNA forms different types of RNAs. So the DNA has small units located on it, and those small units are termed as the transcription unit. One transcription unit form one type of the RNA. Now here the transcription unit has three parts: the promoter, from where the process initiates; the structural gene, which will help in elongation of the newly synthesized RNA; and the terminator site, which will end the process. So the promoter, structural gene and terminator, these are the three essential components of a transcription unit. Now there is the schematic structure of a transcription unit. The DNA strand is shown in a uncoiled strand state. The blue color is showing the template strand and the green color of strand is showing the coding strand. The template strand has the polarity 3 prime to 5 prime, while the coding strand has the polarity 5 prime to 3 prime. The promoter and the terminator locates towards the different ends of the coding strand, which defines or decides it. At the 5 prime of the coding strand, there will be the location of promoter, and at the 3 prime end of the coding strand, there will be the location of the terminator. Now on the template strand, the region in between the promoter and terminator is termed as the structural gene. It is called as structural gene because it will form the RNA strand. The two strands of DNA in the structural gene of a transcription unit is termed as template strand and coding strand. The strand that has polarity 3 prime to 5 prime act as a template and is referred as a template strand. The other strand, which has the polarity 5 prime to 3 prime, is referred as the coding strand. It is clear to you all. The promoter and terminator flank the structural gene in a transcription unit. The promoter is located towards the 5' end of the structural gene, which provides binding site for RNA polymerase, and the terminator locates towards the 3' end of the coding strand, which defines the end of the process of transcription. So basically, the site or the location of promoter and terminator is decided by the coding strand, while the template strand forms the RNA. Now about the structure of a gene. A gene is defined as a functional unit of inheritance. Inheritance is transfer of characters from one generation to another. A gene is also referred as a cistron. It can be defined as a segment of DNA coding for a polypeptide. In simple words, we can say that the functional unit of a gene is cistron. A structural gene and transcription unit could be said as monocistronic, as in eukaryotes, and polycistronic in the prokaryotes. Now, we'll clear these terms monocistronic and polycistronic. In monocistronic, messenger RNA with a single cistron, and in polycistronic there are two or more cistrons. In monocistronic, it consists of a single open reading frames, while in polycistronic, it consists of several open reading frames. Exons are the coding sequences of expressed sequences that appear in mature or processed RNA. Introns are the intervening sequences which interrupt exons and do not appear in mature or processed RNA. Now, what do we mean by these exons and introns? Basically, in the messenger RNA, there are coding sequences and non-coding sequences, because in the prokaryotes there is polycistronic condition. That means one after another there is repetition of the functional units only of gene, and that is the reason it will form the RNA which has all the expressible or the coding sequences over it, and it will simultaneously able to form the protein because there is no interruption at all the coding sequences are present, and they will form the amino acid in a sequence, and finally it will get converted into a protein. So that's why it is termed as polycistronic. While in the eukaryotes, the DNA is showing the monocistronic condition. That means there is a, on the formed RNA there is a sequence which is having the coding sequence, and there is a segment on RNA which is having the non-coding sequences. So the coding sequence is repeated by the non-coding sequence, and again it will do in alternation throughout the length. The exon is the coding sequence and the intron is the non-coding sequence. So if the RNA needs to form the protein, at that time it need to remove the introns first, and it must be having only exons to form a protein. So in the eukaryotes, first the formed RNA need to get processed and need to remove the introns out of it, and it will contain only exon at the time of formation of the protein. That means in prokaryotes the process is very simple, transcription accompanied with translation, while in eukaryotes first the transcription will get finished and then the translation will get started. Now about the process of transcription in prokaryotes. Before getting into it, I will like to explain the major differences between the transcription process in prokaryotes and eukaryotes. In prokaryote it is simpler, and in eukaryotes it is a little bit complicated. Now, what are the complications and what are the differences? In the prokaryotes, as I have already told you, there is the presence of polycystonic condition, and in eukaryotes there is monocystonic condition. In prokaryotes, as there is absence of nuclear membrane, nucleus is absent, only nucleoid is there, so the process of transcription is accompanied with the translation process. While in eukaryotes, because the nuclear membrane is there, so the messenger RNA and ribosomal and transfer RNA all get formed inside the nucleus, and then through the nuclear pore they come out into the cytoplasm, and there the process of translation will take place. In prokaryotes, RNA polymerase is able to form all types of RNA, the messenger RNA, transfer RNA, and ribosomal RNA as per the need of the cell. While in the eukaryotes, the RNA polymerase is of different type to form different types of RNAs. Now the process of transcription in prokaryotes. The first focus on the image. There they have shown the helical structure of DNA. Then you need to focus on the polarity very minutely. 3' to 5' end will act as a parent template, and 5' to 3' strand will act as a coding strand. That means we need to show the process only on the 3' to 5' strand, that is the template strand. Now the image is showing that there is a promoter and there is sigma factor RNA polymerase. You know that RNA polymerase help in the polymerization of the ribonucleotides to form a RNA strand. Now there is elongation and finally the termination. That means this process has 3 steps into it: initiation, elongation, and termination. Now we'll start with the first process, that is first step, that is initiation. The RNA polymerase bind to the promoter and initiates the transcription. The initiation factor or sigma factor recognizes the promoter of the DNA. That means first the RNA polymerase, it get attached with the sigma factor, and that it get attached to the promoter site of the DNA strand or the transcription unit, and then it will start acting. But because the only function of the sigma factor is to initiate the process, so it is also termed as the initiator factor. So after the RNA polymerase, it get attached at the promoter site after breaking down the hydrogen bonds at that site. Towards the inner side, it get attached, not from the outer side. It get in between the strand of DNA and then get attached there by breaking the hydrogen bond at the promoter site. So the sigma factor has finished its function. It moves out of the RNA polymerase and keep involved in other processes of wherever the transcription of the transcription unit is taking place. Now the second part will start, that is second step will start, that is elongation. In elongation, the RNA polymerase facilitates opening of the helix and continues elongation. RNA polymerase uses nucleoside triphosphates as substrate and polymerizes in a template dependent fashion upon the rule of the complementarity. You have already read it that as in replication there is deoxyribonucleoside triphosphate. Here we are having the ribonucleoside triphosphates, and at the time of the polymerization, only a single phosphate will attach to the nucleoside, converting it into nucleotide. So we will get ribonucleotide, and ribonucleotide is the basic unit of the RNA strand. So the two phosphates are there to provide the energy, and so the ribonucleoside triphosphate is again has a dual role. It is acting as a substrate as well as energy molecule. Only a short stretch of RNA remains bound to the enzyme. Now the last step of the process is termination. Once the polymerase reaches the terminator site, here the image, the look at the third part, that is termination. The RNA polymerase binds with the terminator factor, that is the Rho factor, to terminate transcription. To initiate the process, we need the sigma factor, and to terminate the process, we need the Rho factor. So the nascent RNA falls off with the cytoplasm. The nascent RNA falls off with the RNA polymerase, which results in termination of transcription. The transcription and translation can be coupled in bacteria, as the messenger RNA does not require any processing to become active, and also transcription and translation takes place in the same compartment. All these points are clear to you already. Now about the process of transcription in eukaryotes. In eukaryotes, as I have already told you, it is a little bit complicated. It has different type of RNA polymerase involved in the formation of different types of RNAs. It has monocistronic unit, so it will form the exons and introns on the RNA, and so we need to remove the intron, and then only the exon will be there to form a protein. The process will start in the same way. That means you need to repeat all those 3 steps that you have already read in prokaryotes. The process will start similarly, that is, first part is elongation, the first is initiation, then elongation, and third one is termination. The only difference is that there it is the polycistronic strand of DNA. Here it is the monocistronic strand of DNA. So the RNA that will form will get exon and intron in alternative fashion. Let's move to the topic. The 3 will remain the same. You need to focus on that. We will not show it again, but we will proceed in the next step. That is, there are 2 additional complexities in eukaryotes. The first complexity is that there are at least 3 RNA polymerases in the nucleus. RNA polymerase 1 transcribes ribosomal RNA. RNA polymerase 3 is responsible for transcription of transfer RNA, and RNA polymerase 2 transcribe the precursor of messenger RNA, that is the heterogeneous nuclear RNA. That we have already discussed, that the messenger RNA, because it will form the protein, it will convey the information, or it will take the information from the DNA, and then it will form accordingly the protein. So it need to get modified first, and the messenger RNA, which has the repeated unit of exons and introns, need to process first. So that RNA which is not able to form the proteins directly, that messenger RNA with exons and intron is termed as the hnRNA, or heterogeneous nuclear RNA, which is also termed as the precursor of messenger RNA. Now the image is showing the same thing. Now focus on the messenger RNA which is getting formed. 5' towards 3' will be the polarity, because the parent template is from 3' to 5'. Now here you are able to see the yellow part and the orange part. Again the yellow part. The yellow part of messenger RNA is showing the exon, that is the coding sequence, and the orange part is showing the non-coding sequence, that is introns. Now the second complexity is that the primary transcripts contain both the exons and introns and are non-functional in nature. Primary transcripts are subjected to a process called splicing. Splicing, where the introns are removed and exons are joined in a defined order. hnRNA undergoes 2 additional processes called as capping and tailing. In capping, an unusual nucleotide methyl guanosine triphosphate is added to the 5' end of hnRNA and entailing adenylate residue. 200 to 300 molecules are added at the 3' end in a template independent manner, and the fully processed hnRNA is called as mRNA. What happens here is, when you get the hnRNA that is having the exon and introns, you need to process it to convert it into a messenger RNA and to form the protein. So in eukaryotes, when the hnRNA get formed, that means when the process of initiation, then elongation, then termination, and then the hnRNA, it fall off into the nucleoplasm. Now it need to get processed, so the splicing will takes place. What will happen into it is, first the methyl guanosine triphosphate attaches to the 5' end, which is termed as capping. Then the polyadenylate residue, it attaches to the 3' end and it is termed as tailing. And because of capping and tailing, now certain changes takes place in this strand and it will start forming the loops, and those loops has the loop part is having the introns only, that is the interruptions, while the base will be of exon. Now the third step will take place, that is splicing. Now the lyases enzyme, it will cleave the loops and only the exon will remain. That means intron will get removed and only exon will remain into small segments, and at the same moment the ligase enzyme join all these small sequences into a continuous strand of messenger RNA. So in processing, first the capping, then the tailing, and finally the splicing. Now here, what is the significance of complexities? The split gene arrangements represent probably an ancient feature of the genome. The presence of introns is reminiscent of antiquity, and the process of splicing represents the dominance of RNA birth. Split gene is basically the monocistronic gene because in it the functional unit is repeated by the non-functional unit. Functional, non-functional, functional, and again functional. That is alternative repetition of these units throughout the length, and that gene is the split gene or the monocistronic gene, which is found in the eukaryotes only. I think now the topic is clear to you all. Take care of your health, study hard,